Hello, long time no see. There's been a discussion on the Buzzjack music forums this week about who is the biggest musical artist to have not received a UK number one single. Now, I usually don't get involved in forum discussions, but I felt like I needed to contribute to this one because I was reading the discussion initially, and all of the names that seemed to be floated about, certainly the vast majority of the names that were being floated about, were names from before the year 2000, from the previous millennium. Which there are some perfectly good valid shouts there in amongst those names, but I do sometimes feel like we are biased in terms of who we like to give legendary status to. We don't like to give it to newer artists. And it's mad to think that I'm referring to an artist that could have debuted in the early noughties as a newer artist. But I'm not sure there's that many artists that debuted this millennium that we would give that status to. So I decided I would take part in this discussion. And I floated a name out there which nobody had mentioned before. The name was Avril Lavigne. Now, if you know me, you might think that that's because I'm biased. I'm not sure, why you would think that. I don't know. Yeah, okay, maybe I am a little bit biased. She is one of my favourite musicians. I just realised I had the hat prepared. I've literally got the Funko Pop of her is in the background anyway. In my defence, I didn't actually buy that Funko Pop. I did buy the hat though. Hats have utility. Anyway, I floated a name out there, and I made the point of why I felt she should be a worthy consideration. She's got several hits that stood the test of time. There are artists that have followed her and cited her as a major influence. Artists such as Olivia Rodrigo and Billie Eilish, who are some of the biggest artists in the world today, and they're serial chart toppers themselves. I do think that most people would be surprised to learn, if they don't follow the charts, they'd be surprised to learn that Avril Lavigne doesn't have a UK number one. Certainly songs like Complicated, Girlfriend, Skater Boy, people would assume were. But anyway, a poll was run on this forum then. A lot of people agreed with me that Avril Lavigne was a good shout. I will just run through the names that were options in this poll. 89 people have voted in this poll. So let's just go through and see what everybody else thought. The options in the poll are Amy Winehouse, Avril Lavigne, Bob Dylan, Bon Jovi, Bruce Springsteen, Depeche Mode, Green Day, Guns N' Roses, Hall & Oates, Janet Jackson, Led Zeppelin, Metallica, Nat King Cole, Nirvana, Pulp, Radiohead, Red Hot Chili Peppers, REM, The Cure, The Killers, The Who, Tina Turner, and Bob Marley. And there was like an unofficial rule that each person could vote for up to 3 people. So my votes went on Avril Lavigne, given that she was the name that I put forward. Then I voted for The Killers, who, again, you could argue is a bit biased. It's another one of I guess there's only 3 21st century acts in amongst all of those listed there. Avril Lavigne, The Killers, and Amy Winehouse. And obviously, like, I was born in the 90s, but I got into the music, that would have been early noughties. Um, so acts like Avril Lavigne and Killers are naturally sort of acts that are some of my favourites. But Avril Lavigne is definitely like in my top 5 musicians of all time, and the Killers possibly are in the top 5. They're certainly in the top 10. So I voted Avril Lavigne, The Killers, and I voted Bon Jovi, which is not so much biased because I like some of what Bon Jovi have done, but I've not properly listened to any of their albums. I've not listened to all of their singles. I know they're big hits, and for me, of the rest of them, they were a particularly surprising name. Songs like Living on a Prayer, Always, It's My Life. I would have expected those to have been big #1 hits. But it's interesting because everybody else has different perspectives. When I sort of read the BuzzChat forums, I assume sort of that most people are around a similar age to me, as in maybe millennial, Gen Z, zillennial, maybe as a term. That's just always the sort of demographics I assumed of people that are on this forum. Because there's a lot of people that are following modern music, new music that's still making the charts, and I feel like people eventually sort of stop doing that as they get older. I've not reached that point yet. I still like to listen to what hits the charts. But it's interesting because a lot of the older artists have been doing well in this poll. So the person leading the poll out of all of that, given away that it's one of the solo artists, is Bruce Springsteen, which again it's a very good shout. He has obviously got some big hits. He had a biopic movie, didn't he? Then the one that surprises me here. So okay, no, in second place is actually Tina Turner, which again is maybe fair. She has had a lot of hits. Janet Jackson was in third. That was one that surprised me though, because I don't know any Janet Jackson songs. And so I looked up her discography, and apparently she has had a lot of hit singles in the UK. I'm not sure if they've stood the test of time. If I was to ask young people today, maybe younger than me, if I was to ask like my nephew who is 11, 12 years younger than me, I don't think he would know any Janet Jackson songs. I think he would recognise, surely, at least a couple of Tina Turner songs, if not knowing that it was by Tina Turner. And I think he would recognise Bruce Springsteen songs as well. So that one kind of did surprise me, but it's also interesting to see some of the ones that just didn't gain any traction at all. Green Day only got 3 votes. I would have thought Green Day had been more popular than that. Only 3 people out of 89 thought they were worth a vote. The person that I put forward, Avril Lavigne, has done sort of solidly in this poll. She's sort of mid-table. She's got 13 votes. One of them was from me, as I already revealed. There are some other surprising things about it. Amy Winehouse with 19, because yes, she's got a couple of big hits that everybody knows, but she didn't obviously have a long career. She unfortunately died very young, and I'm not sure if she really had the chance to build up that reputation to be worthy of the biggest artist while she was alive. There's certainly a lot of posthumous success. So Bon Jovi ended up getting they're in 4th place, which again they were in my top 3, so 4th. That's about where I would say is fair. The Killers are lagging behind a little bit, but without actually ranking these, I think they're in 6th place in this list. I do think Killers are one of the bigger names. Mr. Brightside, if you didn't know, is now the song that has sold the most chart units in the UK history. So, if that's the measure you use to determine what's the biggest song of all time, then it's certainly a very good measure to claim that The Killer's Mr. Brightside is the biggest song of all time, in spite of the fact it never went to number one. Weirdly, it never went to number 2 or 3 or 4. It peaked at number 10 in the charts, which is kind of mad to think that it's now the biggest song in UK chart history. Because the thing is, it's over 20 years old, and it's just never really left the chart since it came in. It's pretty much as popular as it always is. Most of the time a song gets released, it'll start high and then slowly drift down the charts, and then after a couple of months it'll be out of the charts. That's how music life cycle works. The Killer's Mr. Brightside is just a very weird exception to the rule. A very weird exception to the rule. And that's a song that I think certainly all younger people would know. I think most younger people would know Avril Lavigne songs too. I hope they would. I hope that's not just me being old, liking Avril Lavigne. It might be, but I hope not. But yeah, I just thought it was an interesting discussion. There were a few other names that were floated in the forum that didn't make the poll, names like Linkin Park, and I sort of contributed to the discussion here, and I said, yeah, Linkin Park, definitely a big name. I like people raising more names from the 21st century. But it's maybe not a done deal with Linkin Park. They were very relevant in the singles chart during their last album's era. They could still get a UK number one single. It's unlikely, but it's not necessarily a done deal. And then there were other names like Tate McRae, which I just thought were a bit silly to throw out because she could very easily still get a number one, and she's clearly not as big as a lot of the names on this list. But I think I'll just end it on this note that we're asking who is the biggest artist. There are different measures, aren't there, to what biggest could be. You may have thought it was silly for me to throw out the name Avril Lavigne, but out of all of the people listed here, of the acts that are still active and still releasing music, I would wager, without having researched this, I would wager that Avril Lavigne has got the most Instagram followers out of all of those. Which is a measure that could be used to say that she's the biggest. But then there's Led Zeppelin in this poll, and they've sort of come in mid-table as well. Led Zeppelin, they've certainly got at least one of the biggest selling albums of all time. I think they've got quite a few. I think they've got 2 or 3 albums that sold huge numbers. But the thing is, yes, arguably they could be, because of that, considered the biggest act to not have a UK number one single. But then they never really released singles, so it's not surprising that they didn't have a UK number one. By a similar measure, you could say that Michael Bublé is a huge act, but you wouldn't expect him to have a number one because he's not considered a singles artist, even though he has got some singles that have done well. So, in many ways, there's probably never been a comparison between Led Zeppelin and Michael Bublé before, but maybe I've just found a weird way you can compare them. I don't think I'm going to say, because obviously I don't believe Avril Lavigne is the biggest artist that's never had a UK number one. Because I wouldn't use the Instagram measure. That's obviously highly weighted towards modern acts. But I'm not sure who I would say. I think maybe it's fair to say The Killers, given that it's less abstract to say that they have the biggest single of all time? Mr. Brightside. Biggest single not to get to number one. It's the biggest single, even including songs that have got to number one. I just thought it was an interesting discussion. If you think it's an interesting discussion, why don't you hop on the Buzzjack forum and contribute to it? Or just comment down below. Thanks, guys.